Picture this: the most powerful spiritual leader in the world, a man who represents 1.4 billion Catholics, standing before the cameras with tears streaming down his face. Not the composed, measured response we're used to seeing from Vatican officials, but raw, unfiltered human emotion that broke every protocol in the book. What Pope Leo XIV did in that moment didn't just make headlines. It made millions of people around the world weep alongside him, clutching their own chests. And when you hear what he said, when you truly understand the profound depth of his words, you'll discover why this single moment is being called the most powerful display of Christian compassion in decades. This wasn't a PR stunt. This was a punch to the gut, a hug to the soul, and a complete redefinition of what spiritual leadership can be. Imagine for just a moment the dizzying, suffocating weight of carrying the hopes, fears, and prayers of over 1 billion souls. Now imagine that same man, that same leader, choosing to spectacularly abandon centuries of rigid diplomatic tradition, to rip up the rulebook of papal composure, and to speak directly from his heart about tragedy, about unimaginable loss, about the precious, fragile, infuriating brevity of human life. What you're about to hear will not only restore your faith in humanity, perhaps even making you shed a tear yourself, but it will show you the true, inconvenient meaning of what it means to lead with love, to guide with grace, and to touch the world with the messy, inconvenient, transformative power of genuine compassion. Forget everything you thought you knew about the Vatican. This is about to get delightfully, heartbreakingly real. The story begins yesterday morning, June 12th, not in the hallowed halls of Rome, but in the bustling, vibrant skies above India. Air India Flight AI-171 was supposed to be a routine journey from Ahmedabad to London Gatwick. Just another flight, another dot on the global aviation map. A Boeing 787 Dreamliner, a marvel of modern engineering, carrying 241 precious souls aboard, each one carrying dreams of reunions, hopes for new beginnings, and the love of families waiting, blissfully unaware, for their safe arrival across continents. Among them were 169 Indian citizens, 53 from Britain, 7 from Portugal, and 1 solitary soul from Canada. Mothers, fathers, children, grandparents, each one a universe of love, possibility, and untold stories. But sometimes, dear friends, life reminds us, with a cruel, sudden jolt, just how breathtakingly fragile our earthly journey truly is. How quickly joy can turn to ashes. Just minutes after takeoff, as the plane climbed higher, something went terribly, irrevocably wrong. The aircraft that was meant to carry these beautiful souls safely to their destination instead became the site of one of India's most devastating aviation tragedies in recent memory. More than 200 lives were lost in an instant, a cosmic blink, and the world watched in horror, transfixed and gutted, as the news, chillingly detached in its official reports, spread across every continent, plunging countless homes into an abyss of grief. Now, if you felt even a ripple of emotion from this story, if you feel that stirring in your heart that tells you this matters, that this isn't just another news item to scroll past, I want you to hit that like button right now. Don't just click it, punch it, like you mean it. And please take a moment to subscribe to our channel, because stories like this, stories that remind us of our shared humanity, of the inconvenient truth of our interconnectedness, need to be heard, amplified, and retold. Also, I want to hear from you in the comments. Don't be shy. Tell me where you're watching from. Whether it's a bustling city in Romania or a quiet village in Australia, and share your raw, unfiltered thoughts about how faith and compassion, in their purest forms, can actually help us through the darkest, most desolate moments. Your voice matters, your perspective can be a lifeline, and your story might just comfort someone who desperately needs to hear it today. So don't hold back. When the devastating news reached Vatican City, a place famously known for its ancient traditions and unflappable decorum, something truly unprecedented happened. Pope Leo XIV, born Robert Francis Post in Chicago 69 years ago. Yes, the very first American to ever hold the papal office, a man who knows a thing or two about hot dogs and baseball, received the devastating report in his private study, a room usually reserved for quiet reflection and weighty theological discussions. Those who witnessed what happened next describe a moment that will forever change how the world sees papal leadership, stripping away the centuries of pomp and revealing the raw core of humanity. This man, who had spent his life serving in remote missions across Peru, navigating treacherous jungles and mountains with nothing but his faith and worn shoes, this man, who had risen through the labyrinthine ranks of the church with quiet dignity and measured wisdom, never seeking the spotlight. This man, who had been elected just 1 month ago to lead the global Catholic community, a task that would overwhelm most mortals, did something that stunned even his closest, most jaded advisors, hardened by decades of Vatican politics. He wept, and I don't mean a single dignified tear tracing a path down a stoic cheek. No, this was the deep, soul-wrenching sobs of a man whose heart was visibly, agonizingly breaking for every single life lost, for every family that would never be whole again, for every dream that was cut short in those terrible moments above the Indian landscape. It was messy. It was raw. It was everything a pope isn't supposed to be in public. And it was glorious. Cardinal Pietro Parolin, the Secretary of State, a man famously made of granite and diplomatic steel, later described it as witnessing pure Christ-like compassion in human form. Can you imagine? Even he was floored. But here's what makes this moment truly extraordinary. What elevates it from simple human emotion to something that transcends our earthly understanding of leadership and love. Pope Leo XIV didn't retreat to his private chambers to grieve in solitude, as protocol would dictate. He didn't issue a standard, sanitized diplomatic statement through official, detached channels, written by a committee of bureaucrats. Instead, he insisted, with a fierce, unwavering determination, on speaking directly to the world. Protocol be damned, tradition be set aside, tossed out the window like old confetti. He stood before the cameras, unflinching, his eyes still red and swollen with tears, his voice thick with unbridled emotion, and delivered words that would echo, not just in the news cycles, but in the tender, wounded hearts of millions. My dear brothers and sisters, he began, his voice trembling with the crushing weight of his grief. Today, I do not speak to you as your pope, as your spiritual leader, as the head of the Catholic Church. Today, I speak to you as a fellow human being, a man whose heart is shattered, irrevocably broken by the loss of so many precious lives, so many irreplaceable souls. I have wept for them, for every single one, and I weep with you now, with every grieving soul on this planet, because when one member of our human family suffers, when one life is extinguished, we all suffer. When one life is lost, we are all diminished, a piece of our collective humanity chipped away. Pause for a moment if you can, and let those raw, profoundly human words settle in your heart, sink into your very core. Here was a man, holding perhaps the most historically guarded and ceremonious office on earth, who could have spoken about God's mysterious ways, about finding abstract meaning in suffering, about the distant comfort of eternal life. Instead, he chose to stand in visceral solidarity with human pain, to acknowledge that grief is not a weakness, not a flaw to be hidden, but the deepest, most authentic expression of love, a testament to what it means to be alive. He continued, his words growing stronger, more resolute, even as his emotion remained raw and visibly etched on his face. "The families in India," he declared, his voice rising with conviction. "In Britain, in Portugal, and Canada, they are not statistics. They are not mere numbers in a tragic report, to be filed away and forgotten. They are mothers who will never again hear their children's laughter, never again feel the warmth of their embrace. They are fathers who will never again feel their embrace, never again share a quiet moment. They are children who will never again run into their parents' arms, never know their touch. They are human beings, each one a unique, irreplaceable creation in the image of God. And their loss, their profound, incalculable loss, diminishes all of us, every single one of us." What happened next sent shockwaves throughout the religious world and far beyond. A tremor felt even in the most secular corners of the globe. Pope Leo XIV, with the absolute conviction of a man possessed by a divine imperative, announced that he would personally travel to India, not for a state visit, bristling with diplomatic pomp and ceremony, not for a mere diplomatic mission, where platitudes are exchanged and photo opportunities are carefully staged. Number he would go to pray with the families, to hold their trembling hands, to look into their grief-stricken eyes, to let them know unequivocally that the leader of the Catholic Church was willing to leave his ancient Vatican home, to step out of his comfort zone, to share in their raw, agonizing grief. "I will go to them," he declared, his voice now strong with a quiet, fierce conviction, his gaze unwavering, because that is what Jesus would do. He would not send a letter, however heartfelt. He would not delegate this sacred duty to others, no matter how capable. He would go, and he would weep with those who weep, and he would hold those who need holding. He would be present in their suffering, a beacon of hope. If you're feeling that stirring in your spirit right now, if these words are touching something deep within your soul, a dormant chord of empathy, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button with the force of 1,000 angels and ring the notification bell, because you won't want to miss what comes next. And again, I want to hear from you in the comments. Don't be shy. Tell me about a time when someone's unexpected compassion helped you through a difficult, seemingly insurmountable moment. Share your story, because your experience, your vulnerability, might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today to find strength. The reaction was immediate and utterly overwhelming. Within hours, millions of people around the world were sharing video clips of Pope Leo XIV's emotional, protocol-shattering address. Social media platforms, usually cesspools of outrage and cynicism, were flooded with messages of support, with people from every faith tradition, from every corner of the globe, expressing their admiration for a leader who was willing to show such vulnerable, authentic humanity, who dared to break the mold. It was a digital outpouring of solidarity, a moment of global unity, but it was what he said next that truly broke hearts around the world, turning compassion into a tangible, almost physical force. Speaking directly to the camera, his eyes still glistening with unshed tears, as if he were looking into the soul of each individual viewer, Pope Leo XIV delivered words that seemed to speak directly to every person watching, regardless of their faith, regardless of their background, regardless of their beliefs about religion or spirituality. It was a message that transcended dogma and embraced humanity. To every mother watching this, he pleaded, his voice filled with a tender ache. To every father, to every son and daughter, to every grandparent and grandchild, to every person whose heart has been shattered by loss, I want you to know that you are not alone in this vast, often cruel world. Your sorrows matter. Your pain has profound meaning. Your love for those you've lost is sacred and eternal, a bond that death cannot sever. And if you ever feel forgotten, if you ever feel like your suffering doesn't matter to anyone, like you are a solitary island of grief. Remember this moment. Remember that the Pope of Rome, the spiritual leader of billions, wept for strangers. He wept for people he had never met, for faces he would never see, for dreams he would never know. He wept because love knows no boundaries, no nationality, no creed, and compassion recognizes no borders, no distinctions, no differences. The impact of these words was immediate, profound, and utterly unexpected. Hospitals around the world reported that patients, even those in critical condition, were asking to see the Pope's address, finding a strange comfort in his raw emotion. Grief counselors, trained to maintain professional distance, began sharing clips with their clients. Recognizing the therapeutic power of his message, support groups around the world, struggling with their own burdens of loss, were incorporating his message into their healing sessions, finding a universal language for their pain. Even people who had never set foot in a church, who had never considered themselves religious, who were deeply skeptical of organized faith, were finding comfort, solace, and a glimmer of hope in the raw authenticity of his compassion. One woman from Mumbai, who had tragically lost her husband in the crash, was interviewed by local news, her face streaked with tears. Through her profound grief, she said, her voice trembling but clear, "I am not Christian. I have never been to a church, but when I saw the Pope crying for my husband, for all of us, I felt like someone in this world, someone powerful, truly understood my pain. It didn't matter that we have different faiths. Pain is pain, love is love, and grief is grief. And in that moment, we were all just human." This, dear friends, is the incandescent power of authentic leadership. This is what happens when someone in a position of immense authority, someone accustomed to formality and distance, chooses to lead not with power or politics, not with calculated moves or diplomatic maneuvering, but with pure, unfiltered human connection. Pope Leo XIV showed the world that true strength isn't about maintaining a stoic, unfeeling composure in the face of tragedy. It's about allowing your own heart to break for others, even when doing so makes you vulnerable, exposed, and utterly human. It's about being brave enough to cry in public. As the hours passed and the full, horrifying scope of the tragedy became clear, more details emerged about Pope Leo XIV's unprecedented response, details that further cemented his place as a truly unique leader. He had personally called the families of several victims, reaching out across continents, speaking to them not in Latin or formal religious language, but in simple, heartfelt words of comfort, words that transcended any language barrier. He had arranged for special masses to be held in multiple languages around the world, ensuring that comfort was available in every tongue. He had even, with a quiet stubbornness, instructed Vatican financial officials to contribute directly to relief funds for the families affected, bypassing the usual red tape. But perhaps most remarkably, he had made a decision that his advisors initially vigorously tried to dissuade him from, a decision that would redefine his very role. He announced that he would spend the next month focusing primarily on grief ministry, transforming his papal schedule, visiting not just the families affected by this particular tragedy, but traveling to communities around the world that had experienced recent, profound losses, offering solace wherever it was most needed. He was transforming his papal schedule, the most guarded and traditional in the world, into a continuous mission of comfort and healing. "The Vatican will still function," he explained calmly to reporters, his voice betraying no hint of doubt or fatigue. "The Church will continue its essential work, but right now, at this moment, my calling is clear. I am called to be where the pain is deepest, where the need for comfort is greatest, where people desperately need to know that their suffering matters to God, and equally importantly, to their fellow human beings. I am called to be present." As news of his audacious plans spread, something truly beautiful and unexpected began to happen. Churches around the world, from bustling metropolises to quiet villages, started reporting increased attendance, not just from regular parishioners, the usual faithful, but from people who hadn't been to services in years, their faith dormant or forgotten, people who had never, ever been to church before, drawn by this authentic, undeniable display of compassion, wanting to be part of a community that valued such genuine care for human suffering. The message was clear, resounding through the silence. When leadership is authentic, when compassion is real, when someone in power chooses to use that power to comfort rather than to control, people respond. Hearts open, barriers fall, and the world becomes a little bit more loving, a little bit more connected, a little bit more hopeful, inch by painful inch. 1 week later, Pope Leo XIV stood in a small, humble church in Ahmedabad, the very city where the ill-fated flight had originated, surrounded by families who had lost every single thing that mattered in the crash. He didn't deliver a formal homily. He didn't quote scripture or speak about abstract theological concepts. None of that. Instead, he simply said, his voice quiet but resonating with profound empathy, "I am here because you are here. I am here because your pain is real, searingly so. I am here because love demands that we show up for each other. Especially in the darkest, most desolate moments of our lives, we are not meant to suffer alone." And then, he did something that no pope in modern history, perhaps even ancient history, had ever done. He didn't preach. He asked the families to teach him about their loved ones. He sat in that small church for hours, listening intently, patiently, as they poured out their hearts, sharing stories about the dreams, the quirks, the hopes, and the lives of those who had died. He laughed, a genuine, mirthful laugh, when they shared funny, poignant memories. He cried, openly and unashamedly, when they spoke of their raw, unconsolable grief. He held their hands, a tangible connection, when words simply weren't enough, when tears were the only language. By the end of that day, videos of Pope Leo XIV sitting patiently with these families, learning their stories, sharing their tears, had been viewed by over 1 billion people worldwide, a silent testament to the power of human connection. But more importantly, those families, the ones who had lost everything, knew that their loved ones hadn't died in anonymity, hadn't become mere statistics. They knew that the leader of the Catholic Church, a man of immense global stature, would carry their stories, their memories, and their grief with him forever. The ripple effects of this moment continue to spread, subtly but surely, around the world. Seminaries are reporting increased enrollment from young people who explicitly state they were inspired by Pope Leo XIV's example of compassionate leadership, seeing a different path for service. Interfaith organizations are experiencing unprecedented levels of cooperation as people from vastly different religious traditions work together, drawn by a common purpose: to support grieving communities, bridging divides that once seemed insurmountable. Mental health professionals are incorporating his model of authentic presence and shared vulnerability into their practice with clients who are processing loss, recognizing its profound therapeutic value. But perhaps most importantly, millions of people around the world are learning, slowly but surely, that true leadership isn't about having all the answers, or maintaining perfect composure, or projecting an image of invincibility. It's about being willing to break your own heart open for others, to show up authentically in moments of crisis, to be messy and real, and to use whatever power or influence you have, however small it might seem, to comfort those who are suffering, to alleviate their pain. As we reflect on this extraordinary moment in history, as we consider what it means to witness such authentic, raw compassion from a world leader, we're reminded of something profoundly true about human nature, something that often gets lost in the noise and division of our modern world. We're reminded that beneath all our superficial differences in faith, culture, nationality, and background, We share the same aching capacity for love, the same crushing vulnerability to loss, and the same deep, fundamental need for connection and comfort when life becomes overwhelming, when the world falls apart around us. Pope Leo XIV's tears weren't just about one tragic plane crash, however devastating. They were about every mother who has lost a child, every spouse who has buried their partner, every child who has lost a parent, every family that has been torn apart by sudden, inexplicable tragedy. Everywhere, at any time, his willingness to break protocol, to shed the trappings of power, to show his naked humanity, to lead with his heart instead of his head, reminds us that the most powerful force in the universe isn't authority or control. It's not wealth or influence. It's love, expressed through authentic, inconvenient, heart-wrenching compassion. So as we conclude this story, this moment that touched millions of hearts around the world, I want to leave you with the Pope's final words from that unforgettable day in India. Standing in that small, humble church, surrounded by grieving families, his voice steady now, but still warm with emotion, he looked directly into the camera, as if speaking to every single person watching, every person who had ever experienced loss, every person who had ever wondered if their pain mattered to anyone else in this vast, indifferent world. "My dear friends," he said, his gaze unwavering, "remember this day not because a pope cried, for tears are merely water, but remember it because love showed up. Remember that when your heart is breaking, when your world feels like it's falling apart, piece by painful piece, when you wonder if anyone else understands your profound, aching pain, there are people who care. There are people who will weep with you, who will hold space for your grief, who will remind you that your story matters, that your suffering is seen. And remember that the God who created you, the universe that birthed you, loves you with a love so deep, so profound, so utterly boundless, that even in your darkest moments, even when you feel most alone, you are never truly alone. That love holds you. If this story has touched your heart today, if you felt that stirring of hope and connection that comes from witnessing authentic compassion, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. But more importantly, take this message with you into your own life. Look for opportunities, big or small, to show up for others, the way Pope Leo XIV showed up for those grieving families. Be willing to break your own heart open for someone else's pain, to be vulnerable, to be human. Use whatever influence you have, however small it might seem, to comfort those who are suffering, to offer a moment of genuine connection. And please share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us how this story has affected you, how it's changed your perspective on leadership, on compassion, on what it truly means to care for others in a world that often seems to forget. Your voice matters, your story matters, and your willingness to engage with this message of hope and love can help create a more caring, more connected, more compassionate world for all of us. One heartfelt moment at a time. Thank you for watching, for listening, and for being part of a community that believes in the transformative, messy, beautiful power of authentic compassion. Till next time, remember that your capacity to love, to comfort, and to show up for others is one of the most powerful forces in the universe. Use it wisely, use it generously, and watch as it changes not just the lives of those you touch, but your own life as well.